Hello again, friends and neighbors, and welcome to another conversation about writing. Today we're going to talk more about argument. Making an argument in writing, in academic writing to be specific. Academic writing is more about argument than perhaps anything else, and that means that you state a claim, you make a thesis statement, and you support that statement with a line of argument and supporting evidence that persuades your readers of the validity of that statement. And a thesis statement is something that is, as I said, debatable, and it can be disagreed upon by reasonable people. So you want to mount a reasonable argument, and part of a reasonable argument, the part we're going to focus on today, has to do with supporting your claims with specific evidence. Okay, we're going to use some ideas about evidence that I've extracted from a very good handbook for writers called Rules for Writers, written by Diana Hacker and Nancy Summers. And in that book, they talk about the various forms of evidence that you might use to support your claims in an academic piece of writing. And the first one they list is facts and statistics. Now, it seems obvious that you're going to use that as evidence to support a claim. But very often, facts and statistics are either not thought of as all that important and left out of arguments that one expects your readers to accept and to support, or they're misused, they're misapplied, statistics particularly. So let's just talk what facts and statistics are a little bit and how they can be applied to supporting your claims in an argument. A fact is defined as something that is known with certainty. We're not debating this. This is not open to question. It's objectively verified, something that is known to be true. Harrisburg is the capital of Pennsylvania. Is a fact. It can be verified. No one is going to argue with that particular element who is aware of facts and the truth of that particular statement. So facts need to be thought of as something that you don't need to argue with. They can be misapplied, they can be argued with in terms of how they apply to an argument, but basically in and of themselves, they are true. Now, statistics are collections of numerical facts. So statistics usually means you've got a bunch of numbers that are collected for a purpose of making some particular interpretation based on numbers, but they are facts. Now, statistics can be manipulated to the point where they don't function in the service of truth. They can be misapplied or manipulated or interpreted in ways that are not credible and do not support a claim really. So you have to be careful with statistics, but in and of themselves, statistics are facts. So they're a form of facts, only they're numerical. So facts and statistics are one important ingredient or concept or collection of evidence, types of evidence that you can use to be very persuasive in your writing. And if you leave out facts and statistics to support your claim, you're weakening your argument consistently. Not every claim probably has facts and statistics to support it, but when they are available, don't leave them out. Okay, examples and illustrations are another form of evidence. Examples and illustrations. What are we talking about here? Well, very often an example or an illustration is conveyed in story form. So in order to make a point or support a claim in your line of argument, you might tell a story that illustrates how the truth of your argument plays out in a real situation or one that is hypothetical that you've kind of invented as a story to tell about it. But generally, the more factual or real your story is, the more credible it's going to be. So often a story can be a very good form of supporting your claim. You provide the details and you give specific instances or examples that brings the evidence to life. It's better than facts and statistics in that, I should say it supplements facts and statistics in that it tells the story in a different way. It brings things to life. It allows the reader to imagine the situation in which a claim plays out and results in a certain outcome, for example. So it has the ability to reach readers in a way that facts and statistics really don't. It has a more personal approach. It has a more emotional sometimes component to it to use facts and or examples and illustrations than do facts and statistics. So think about using examples, using illustrations, and making those work to support your claim. Visuals are another way of supporting your claim with evidence. Visual evidence can be a variety of forms. It can be charts, graphs, it can be diagrams that you use, or photographs to illustrate the truth of or to provide evidence for your claim that persuade readers of the evidence of their claim in a more specific, using a different sensory set of sensory organs than perhaps facts and statistics and so forth. So when you can see something, you've heard the expression, a photograph or a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, that's really true. You can say so much in one small illustration or a visual that it often is far more persuasive than some of the more concrete things you might do. Okay, but these are concrete things. So charts, graphs, diagrams, and photographs give you vivid and detailed evidence that capture attention. It focuses attention in a very interesting way. Statistics, for example, can be better conveyed in a graph or in a chart, perhaps, than just dropping them into the text of your writing, for example. So they're very useful and they're very persuasive and they're compelling. Graphs are very good for organizing complex data, statistical data. So if it's something that's hard to understand, hard to grasp, you can put it into a very simple graph and make it comprehensible. People will understand it, and that will add to the evidence that supports your contention, your claim. Photographs also convey abstract ideas, ideas that probably come through more vividly when you can show somebody something than when you're trying to tell somebody something. The questions, though, you want to ask for visuals are important, because if you are using visuals improperly, then they're probably having the opposite effect of being credible evidence for your claim. Is it accurate? Is it credible? Is it relevant? Okay, accuracy, of course, is important. If you have a graph that is just not truthful, it's not accurate, it's skewed, it's not constructed properly, it doesn't show the reality of the statistics that you've included in your graph, then it's losing credibility. It does not have the believability that a reader needs to bring to accept your claim, and that gets to credibility. Does someone believe it? It can be accurate, but if it's not credible, then it still is not making your point with your reader in a compelling way. And if it doesn't have anything to do with the subject you're trying to convey to your reader, obviously it's not there. Many people will just throw in photographs into their work in service of an argument, for example, a written argument, because it's pretty, because they happen to have that photograph. Same with graphs sometimes, or charts, or those kind of things. If it's not relevant, don't use it. And then consider whether it appeals on these three bases. Okay? One or more of these might be the appeal of your visuals, but consider what it's doing. How are your readers reacting to it? Is it presenting something in a logical fashion? Is it supporting a logical argument? One thing leads to another, and therefore this conclusion can be drawn. Is it ethical? Are you manipulating the reader? Very easy to do that with photographs, even with statistics, as we said before, and statistics and graphs can be ethically shaky if you manipulate the reader or mislead the reader in any way. And emotionally, how's it coming across? And you really can do a lot with a photograph, for example, in creating an emotional response in your readers. So, for example, a child in poverty pictured in a slum in a city in India, for example, can be very powerful in supporting an argument or a claim that a certain policy will alleviate the situation, will address the situation. So it can be a very good, emotional, and credible piece of evidence to use. A vivid photograph or even charts or graphs can have an emotional component to them. How will your visual function? What service will it perform in the structure of your argument? Where does it fit in? How does your graph relate to what you are writing about? How does your photograph illustrate what you are writing about? So you need to question that. Ask that question as to what the visual is doing for you as well. Expert opinion is another form of evidence that many people use, and you should very much consider using it in the writing that you do to be persuasive. So when you bring in an expert to add to what you believe is true, or make the claim or support the claim that you are making in your writing, you add a lot of force to it. You may not be credible, you may not be known, and yet here you are trying to argue for a claim and make an opinion or persuade a reader to believe what you're saying on your own, from your own standpoint. You can do that with facts and statistics, as we said, and other forms of evidence, but expert opinion will back you up. If someone who is recognized as an expert in the field that you're writing about says and supports the opinion that you're putting forth, obviously that's strengthening your argument. You got to make sure, however, that your source is an expert in the field that you are writing about. So you might need to present credentials to let your reader know why your source is an expert in the field that you're writing about. And then when you use the expertise that you're drawing on from your source, there are a couple of ways you might consider doing it, and it's important to think about how you're going to make that integrate into your argument. You can summarize what an expert says. In other words, you don't want to go on at length about someone who's written a book on a subject, for example, or even a lengthy article. So you need to summarize what that expert's opinions are and how they support your claim. You can do the same thing by paraphrasing instead of quoting. Instead of using the exact words, use your own words to convey what the expert might have said about the topic that you're citing his expertise on. Or you can use a direct quote, and it's most often useful to use a direct quote when the words are powerful, when it's a particularly apt way of putting it, and the words that the expert uses have the force of credibility in a way that you wouldn't get if you paraphrased or summarized what the expert said. When you use anything like a summary or a paraphrase or a quote from an expert, you of course have to cite your source, just as you would any other kind of evidence. Where did this come from? When was this particular quote uttered? Was it written? Was it in a speech? Was it in an interview that you did and conducted with this expert or what? But you do have to cite the source. So these are some kinds of evidence that you can bring to bear on your claims that will help you persuade your reader of the truth of your claim, of your point of view that you have put into your thesis statement. But without evidence, without that hard evidence that is supporting what you're saying, you lack credibility. So you must bring evidence to bear on the claims that you make in your argumentative writing.